Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video. There's been a lot of interest in the supercomputer data cluster cooling system here at Giga Texas, and I've been asked to do some deep dive videos. And so today I thought I would do so, and thank you very much to one of my viewers, Seti Park here on X, has put together an excellent discussion and article about the cooling system, and he even did some research into the patent that covers the construction and design of this cooling system. The link is at the bottom of the screen. It will be in the video description as well. I'd also like to point out that the patent was granted on 24 December 2019. And you may think, that's been a long time. How is that related to Giga Texas? That's a very good question. We know that Tesla was thinking about this all along. And way back in my video, 26 July 2021, I covered this tweet by Elon Musk talking about how the factory was going to grow an additional 500 feet. That's exactly what we're seeing now. So they were clearly thinking about this data cluster and what would be needed even back then. I also want to say thank you to my Patreon, Steve Davis, for his help and information about the cooling system, the components, and what I should be looking for as far as equipment deliveries on site. So before we go into the main discussion, let's take a quick look at how a water-cooled cooling system operates. Water-cooled chillers release thermal energy from the refrigerant in the condenser to a cooling water loop, which is then pumped to a cooling tower where it is cooled for reuse. Water-cooled chillers are more costly to install, but they are more efficient and are often used in larger commercial properties with higher cooling loads. Now, chiller systems have one or two extra water loops involved with the heat transfer process, and that's because the refrigerant receives thermal energy from liquid water instead of air, and a different type of heat exchanger is required. Let's look at how this is installed at Giga Texas. Now, based on the patent, we know it's a dual mode system that combines mechanical chillers, as you can see as an example in the upper right, and the cooling towers that are most visible here in the southeast corner of Giga Texas. In addition to that, there are these large water pipes that direct the water between the extension and the cooling plant. They are underground, and they also have a set of thrust blocks, as you can tell with these concrete pieces that have been installed using formwork in the trenches. Now, this is required anytime there's a change of direction to prevent the pipes from moving or fracturing, and it basically transfers the load to the trench system and away from the pipes. Unlike conventional systems with a 1-to-1 ratio of non-mechanical to mechanical cooling, Tesla's design uses a 3-to-1 ratio, which significantly increases the use of more efficient cooling methods. With this image, a good view of the manifold system that was installed on the ground floor underneath the slab. And here the forms and rebar were in place. You can see those manifolds sticking up out of the rebar. Once this is finished up the concrete, which has already happened, this is most likely the area where the chiller units will be installed. This system does have variable capacity, and it's able to provide full cooling throughout the year, adjusting output based on outdoor conditions. This image here gives you another vantage point of the installation prior to the ground slab being poured. Thermal storage integration is a key design feature of this installation, and it's necessary to manage peak loads during hot and humid hours by storing excess cooling capacity generated during cooler periods. This image shows you the tanks that have been installed in the southeast corner of Giga Texas. I believe this is part of that thermal storage tank installation. Let's use this diagram to put it all together. Now, there are multiple cooling towers, and they provide non-mechanical cooling and are the primary cooling units for this installation. The chillers provide mechanical cooling when ambient conditions don't allow for full cooling via the towers, and this is what we're going to see on that ground floor. Heat exchangers allow heat transfer between the cooling towers and the chilled water loop, and that chilled water loop circulates through the system, bypassing components as needed based on various conditions. Now, the system operates in three main ways. On cold, dry days, all towers can be used for direct water cooling. On mild days, water may be partially cooled by the towers before going to the chillers. And on hot, humid days, the water bypasses the towers and goes directly to the chiller units. Heat exchangers have two independent circuits, one for the process, one for the service media. They work by removing the unwanted heat from the process and transfer it to the service media, which is usually water or a water glycol mix. Water-cooled heat exchangers are much more efficient than the comparable air-cooled heat exchangers. There are basically three kinds of the water-cooled heat exchangers. The shell and tube, which is the widest range of applications and capabilities, and you can see that in the upper right. The plate style, which is most efficient and most compact in the center, and spiral, which is efficient, and that's ideal for lower volume with high-pressure applications. At Giga Texas, I believe we are going to see the plate-type heat exchangers installed, and here is the reason why. At the west side staging location, we see these Evapco fan units and also the plate-type heat exchangers waiting for installation. This is a good close-up view of the heat exchangers and what they look like. They are red and silver. There are many of them, and I do expect to see these installed in the south end for the cooling system. Now you may ask, what about the Evapco fan units? Where are they going to be used? And I think that they will also be used in the south end, very similar to what we see here back in 2021 when similar units were installed on the fourth floor above the 4680 production cell portion of the main factory. And at the time, this is what that installation looked like. If we go today onto the roof, we can see the cooling and exhaust ductwork assemblies on top of this area. Now, if these are installed on the south extension, as I expect, then I am looking to see these kinds of ductwork and cooling unit enclosures installed. So something to look forward to as time progresses. Finally, I thought I would give you a view of how all of this is coming together on the second floor. This is looking in from the west side. On the left is where the large cooling system water pipes run, and we can see the mezzanine where the supercomputer cluster is being installed. In addition to that mezzanine, underneath is where additional cooling piping and other equipment is being installed, and there's some temporary cooling system pumps and equipment that are already installed being used to either test or prepare the system as it continues to evolve. So anyway, this is how it is all coming together on this part of the south extension. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion about the cooling system for the supercomputer cluster. I would like to thank my viewer Seti Park on X and my Patreon Steve Davis again for their help in researching and the assistance with making this deep dive analysis possible. If you would like to support my efforts, please consider using these links, which will be in the video description. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on my YouTube video, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. For today's flight, I'm going to be concentrating mostly on the south end and also the west side to be in conjunction with what we discussed in the intro. But first, this is a good view of the lined pond on the southeast side, the natural pond that is still remaining. We do see some berm work on the left, and of course River Road extension with some of the workshops and materials for the glass company. The multi-level parking garage is definitely busy. We can see the bus picking up people after they park to shuttle them into work, and there is some dirt being piled at this intersection between Robotic Avenue and where eventually it will connect with the River Road on the south. The graded area here on the east still looks like it's waiting for the next phase of construction, while we also see more of the steel corrugated pipe at the bottom of the screen here on the north part of the multi-level parking garage. So a great view overall of this part of the site and how the multi-level parking garage with some of that grass seating mix around the base of the structure looks today. And as we continue to fly towards the factory itself, I'm going to turn towards the south, give you a good view of this gap between the main building and the multi-level parking garage and some of the activity that is on the ground level as well. Now, I'm going to point the drone back over the roof section, bring it down to a lower altitude, fly over these ductwork that we see in the bottom right and what's coming up directly ahead. This is that new section that has been added recently. Underneath here is additional Evapco chilling units, and you can tell with the vents. There's still this open section with the kind of the safety fencing around, so you can see some pipe work in there. But this is again was permitted as a server room cooling unit, so it may be related to what's going on in the south, or it may be a completely separate facility. As we fly along the parapet wall, we can get a good look at the rack mounts with the cabling for electrical, and also some pipe work that goes around the original parapet wall, kind of bends towards the center of the screen and leads us into where we see the continued installation of roofing insulation and some of that membrane that helps with drainage. And a good view of the double layers of this rack mount with some of the electrical cabling already installed at the bottom level, and they're starting on the top, and is a good view of where it enters into the building. Those black kind of square items are roof drains, and that'll be part of the system to drain the water when we get rain here at Giga Texas. So anyway, this is the current situation with what is going on with the roofing. And as we get close to the edge of the building, I'll look down at the gap between the extension and the cooling plant. And what we can tell is that the underground water pipes have now been buried, and they're putting in some gravel mix and also some more dirt. Next to it is the electrical conduit. And you can see next to that kind of bulldozer and that orange fence, the brown pipes that are sticking up out of the ground, one at a 90-degree bend and two of them underneath the cooling plant. As I continue to maneuver the drone around the crane, it gives you a good view of this entire section, the bottom of the plant, and the work that is going on between the two structures. And as I continue to fly in closer, it's a great view of where all of those pipes have been filled in with the dirt, and this section is rapidly coming to a conclusion, at least with the major trenching. And so I'm going to fly over the power lines, give you a good view of the fan units on top of the cooling plant, and also bring the drone down past the power lines, and I'll zoom in. I wanted to show you the water tanks and kind of that concrete basin around it that's to most likely collect any leakage, and a good view of how that installation is coming along, and also some of the interior walls, some of the equipment, some in blue wrapping on the second floor. We can see more of the steel pipe work being installed on that second floor as well, and a lot of work on the ground floor installing more equipment of the cooling plant. And as I continue to maneuver around the power lines looking into the east, a good view of work that's going on the ground floor, additional kind of construction with the interior walls, also where the ground slab is. And we will come back in closer here in just a moment, and I'll show you more work that's going on with the manifolds underneath the ground, preparing for either the heat exchangers or more likely the chiller units to be installed. So let's come up over the power lines and bring the drone back down near this light post, and I will give you another zoom in, and we'll take a look at the activity here in a closer view. As I mentioned, the brown pipes are pretty much buried now. They're finishing up filling the trenches in. You can see the manifolds and the work that's going on the ground floor as they install more of that equipment. As I bring the drone down slightly lower and turn towards the building, we can get a good look inside where the manifolds that we talked about in the intro have been installed with looks like 90-degree pipe bends. You can see those black pipes in the middle sticking up out of the ground, some additional equipment around that area, and of course on the second floor, good views in there of the work that's going on. And again, more interior walls being installed behind that temporary staircase. And as I continue to point back towards the west. We can see some of the generators in the bottom right, some of the work that's going on with these 3 tunnels. This one still has a lot of water from rains. We had another huge rainstorm come through last night. More of the rebar being stored and fashioned into rebar cages on the right. And this is a great view of the central tunnel with the forms rebar and how it is looking today. I'll try to bring the drone down a little lower so you can get a good view inside, kind of get a pretty good idea of what this is looking like. I'm still expecting the other tunnels to have a similar treatment. We do see more rebar cages on the right-hand side of the screen. This front-end loader just delivered a large section of the formwork. And I think this is in preparation to begin that formwork around this tunnel. And some of the rebar cages, it also looks like they've drained out water on this one to work on it. As we fly up over the concrete wall of the cyber pond, it's a good look at this triangular section that has been graded and that temporary road. While we're here, I wanted to go look at the work that's going on near the South Bridge. And this is more reconfiguration work and maybe even repairs of the underground water management system. This is a part of the drainage that drains the cyber pond and the water drainage around the factory to the Colorado River. So this is a good view across the bridge to that west support facility, and some more work that's going on underneath the bridge here. And this work on the berm is continuing as well next to these kind of boxes on the ground, the electrical boxes. And this is in the general area where fiber optic cable has been installed very recently. This road still looks temporary to me, probably for the construction process. And as I continue to fly closer to the main entrance, or the new entrance, I will zoom in. It's a great view of some of the work that's going on inside, some of the deliveries, equipment, and also interior wall structures, and just other activity that is going on inside here. As I zoom back out, I will maneuver the drone towards the west side of the facility, and I want to give you a good look on the interior and kind of go with what we talked about in the introduction of the video. Right now, it looks like crews are working with that blue man lift for preparation for glass. So these views are going to be coming to an end, at least the clear views, fairly soon. But this is a great view into that mezzanine area, also where a lot of the temporary pipes and pumps and some of the other units that are being either installed or used for testing. See other materials as well, and work on that upper mezzanine continues at a pretty quick rate. We see the red Tesla bridge crane on the top as well. In this large open section with that fan that's spinning, the water cooling pipes are visible and they extend towards the drone. And we can see in through that opening where that fan is and how that part is continuing to progress. The boring tunnel looks like there is work that is underway around the tunnel. Maybe they're preparing the main entrance facing structure. And then on the ground floor, more of the equipment and deliveries that we saw through that entranceway. The opening in the floor is that trapezoidal section, which forms what I think is going to be part of that entrance. As I turn back towards the north, this gives you a good view of this section of the new extension, kind of that mezzanine level in the middle of the screen, some of the new wall structure. Looks like some of the crew are standing on the perimeter grade beam for work, and there's continued excavation work underneath that section as well. It's early in the morning, so not too many Cybertrucks exiting the factory at this point in time, but construction continues while production ramps back up. As we take a look across the highway, it's a good overall view of the entire west support facility, starting with the end-of-line facility, the outbound lot, that large clearing that's waiting for asphalt, the boring tunnel west side, and the west warehouse on wheels. As we get closer in, I did notice that the boring company crews were removing more of these kind of concrete liners that form the roadway surface inside the tunnel. And these were all being prepared for transport off-site, I believe, which may indicate that they are very close to having the roadway surface completed. Also, many of these wooden shoring planks are empty now. They had these concrete liners, as you can see on the middle of the screen. These are all that remain to finish up the tunnel, or maybe these are some extras as well. But nevertheless, it's a great sign that the boring company is making progress inside the tunnel with that roadway surface. And we'll come back for some closer views here in a moment. But first, I wanted to take a look at this southwest section, this triangular kind of lot, and see what is going on today. And we see the materials on the left, more of the dirt being stored. Some of the glass panels on the bottom of the screen, some pipage being stored here as well. And a lot of these steel items, one of my Patreons has mentioned that this looks more like beams rather than columns, so maybe interior construction. And of course, this large clearing, still getting some dirt work at the moment, but I still don't know what that is going to be. As I maneuver around the triangular section, I want to give you a better view of all of the steel items that are being stored here. Again, it looks more like beams rather than columns, and it'll be interesting to watch where this material ends up. But a great view back towards the main facility and that large extension on the south and how it is starting to take shape. The material staging yard and also some of the workshops is busy as usual. At the bottom of the screen, we see light poles, some conduit, a lot of pumps and pipe units. These two tanks on the right-hand side of the screen, which I think are going to be part of the baghouse filtration plant next to casting. The orange and white workshop, more piping, some of the trailers that store equipment, cooling units as on the right-hand side of the screen, an EDRA delivery here that has been here for a few weeks, and some large spools of wiring. So a lot of building materials still remain on this site. As we get closer to the north part of the outbound lot, what we can tell is that activity over the weekend has been strong as far as preparing vehicles from last week and shipping them off-site. There are very little remaining at the moment, and this is why the production getting ready to spool back up is going to be important today so that they can start the week off strong. But most of the outbound lot, as you can tell, is empty, so it's just a new phase of their process with the shift schedule that changed 2 weeks ago. Here's a good view of the tents that are doing some checkouts of vehicles and some activity on the test track next to the end-of-line facility. And we'll get closer into the supercharger site. This is just a quick view of how it looks, and of course the main factory across the highway. And this large clearing, still waiting to see what they will do with it and when they will be ready to pave it. As we get closer to the boring company site, the main thing that's very visible is just how empty it is with materials and supporting equipment. Quite a bit has been dismantled and removed off-site. They still do have power coming from that green transformer box. And as I zoom in, a good close-in view of some of the materials, some of the flexible conduit in those spools, and the main tunnel itself. There is still visible pipes on the bottom part of the tunnel, which means that the road surface has not reached to the end on this side. But as we talked about before, the number of the tunnel roadway surface liners is really coming to an end. So hopefully we'll see this finished up, and then they can start on the facing structure of the tunnel very soon. So I'll give you some more views of the boring tunnel site, and then we will resume the narration further to the north. Here's a good view of this material staging yard with those two easily visible tents. And I just want to fly over here slowly so we can get a good view of some of the materials in addition to the trailers for the offices. And it looks like there's some red and white items on the bottom of the screen that are associated with some of the production parts of Giga Texas. Now, as we drive up towards this part of the material staging yard, I wanted to stop here because this has all of the sections that are part of the Evapco fan units, some of the ventilation shafts. We see the tanks and the heat exchangers. As I zoom in, this is a good view of this equipment, and it goes along with what we talked about in the video intro. There were more tanks than this, and it looks like some of them have been moved for installation. And then here we only see two of those plate type heat exchangers. Most of the rest of them have already been moved for installation. Again, I believe down in the south end of the factory's extension. But a great view of all of the Evapco units and the base units that remain. As we talked in the intro, something similar to this was installed in the fourth floor above the 4680 cell portion of the factory. So I'll be continuing to watch to see where these end up going and how they are going to be used here at Giga Texas. And then finally, more of the steel items stored in this north material staging yard. And this has changed to some degree, although the inventory has not seemed to change out very much over the last month or so. So it's something I'll continue to watch. A great view across this section of greenbelt and trees, the highway, and Giga Texas in the backdrop. So I'm going to continue to fly to the north, give you some views of the facility from this direction, and also a good view of that central highway. And we'll resume the flight on the other side, and we'll take a look at the electrical switch yard. There's a good view of the megapacks on the right, the new electrical switch yard in the center, some of the large power lines and poles on the north end, and a good overall view of the site, the east parking lot, and that multi-level parking garage. As I bring the drone down lower, what I want to do is give you a view into this kind of east section on the south end of the electrical switch yard. I think that we will see an additional transformer, and we've talked about that before. There were filings, public filings about that, and where that temporary fence is on the vault, I expect another one of those trailers, the white control trailers, soon. We do see work continues with pulling wires through the conduit, and that's what's going on the right. They put it down on that kind of that fabric, and it makes it easier to pull the pipes. Also, we see more of the equipment arriving in this section that used to be the temporary electrical switch yard until it was dismantled. As we fly back over the power lines, I did notice that there was form work and rebar work going on here where the four sections or grouping of risers coming out of the conduit are. So let's get in here close. I'll give you a zoom in. We can see the work that is underway. This looks like a pretty substantial slab that's being constructed. So it looks like probably some sort of heavy electronic equipment will be installed in this portion of the site. And this is also where the electrical conduit extends up to the switch yard and then down through this area to the south across Tesla Road and to the casting machine structure. Here's a good view of that red concrete that was poured. We saw that happening on my previous video, and how these concrete vaults look today. As we fly over the path of the conduit underneath the road and the parking lot, you can see where that terminates into that concrete section, just into the north of the casting machine structure. Speaking of castings, a lot of them being stored here, just north of all of these new receiving doors that have been cut into this part of the exterior walls. And speaking of which, these three kind of black squares or rectangles on the wall. As I zoom in, it's pretty clear that it has been cut through, and it's most likely going to be either doorways or some sort of ventilation openings through that area. And it is possible it's ventilation because on the inside in that area next to the two 9,000-ton gigapresses, they have a temporary kind of air conditioning unit set up inside. So maybe this will be a permanent replacement. As we wrap around the east part of the wall and look at what is going on here, a couple of things of note. On the bottom next to the truck is where they saw cut the concrete. Looks like they are doing additional work in this dirt section, not only on the north end, but on the east side with some trenching underway. And we can see some of those screw-type pier tops and the conduit, as well as some of the form work, and additional concrete's been moved away from that door. As we come up closer and higher over the baghouse filtration plant, that tank is most likely in its final location since it's in the middle of that rectangular catch basin. And the work on the filtration units on the south end looks like it is making a lot of progress. In addition to that, we see more pipes and more equipment have been delivered, and some of which has been installed underneath that steel structure itself. And a good view, of course, with the castings and the rack mounts at the bottom of the screen. As I zoom out, this is a great view of this portion of the factory and the work that is underway. So anyway, to end the video, I just want to remind you I'm concentrating mostly on that south end and the west side today. And this goes along with the intro discussion that we had. I hope that you found all of the information and what we were able to see helpful and informative. As always, thank you very much for watching. Have a great week.